Hi everyone. This video summarizes the absorption of the carbohydrates, protein, and the fat along the human gastrointestinal tract. First of all, we will start with the carbohydrate. In the oral cavity, the carbohydrate will be broken down by the amylase and produce some of the monosaccharides. So these monosaccharides, mainly the glucose, will be able to absorb in the oral cavity through the facilitated diffusion. However, the amount of absorption of this monosaccharide is very low, is quite low in the oral cavity. So that's why oral cavity is not the major site. Yeah, it's not the major site for the carbohydrate absorption. Then next, we move on to the stomach. In the stomach, there is no enzyme to digest the carbohydrate. So there's no absorption of the monosaccharide here in the stomach. The major site for completing the digestion of the carbohydrate and also absorption of the carbohydrate would be in the small intestine. The amylase and also the lactase, sucrase, and the maltase in the small intestine will fully break down, will complete the digestion of the polysaccharide and also the disaccharide to produce the monosaccharide like the glucose, galactose, and also the fructose. The glucose and galactose will be absorbed through the active transport with the sodium ion, while for the fructose, it will be absorbed through the facilitated diffusion. So small intestine is the major site where the digestion and also the absorption of the carbohydrate is completed. After that, in the large intestine, there's no more digestion or the absorption of the carbohydrate. Next, we will look at the protein. Protein has no absorption in the oral cavity and also the stomach. This is because in the oral cavity, the protein is not digested at all because there is no enzyme being released in the oral cavity. While in the stomach, there is enzyme that can digest the protein, which is the pepsin. So pepsin is going to break down the protein to become the smaller polypeptide chain. But this polypeptide chain is still too big to be absorbed. So that's why there's no absorption of the protein in the stomach as well. The major site of the absorption and also the digestion of the protein, it will be occurring in the small intestine. In the small intestine, the protein will be further broken down. It will be all those shorter polypeptide chain. It will be further broken down by the trypsin and also the those aminopeptidase and also the dipeptidase. So these polypeptide chain will be fully broken down to become the amino acids. So these amino acids is the smallest unit. Okay, so that's why it will be absorbed here. This amino acid will be absorbed through active transport with the sodium ion. And similar to the carbohydrate, small intestine is the place where is the site where all the protein will be fully absorbed. There's no absorption at all in the large intestine. Lastly, we will look at the absorption of the fat or the so-called triglycerides. In the oral cavity, there's no absorption of the fat. Even though in the oral cavity, there will be lingual lipase, and the lingual lipase will have some limited digestion of the fat. Yeah, it is true that the fat digestion starts here, but then, well, the fat is not absorbed here in the oral cavity. moving into the stomach, the lingual lipase get activated, working together with the gastric lipase. So these two lipase will break down more fat to become the short chain fatty acid. So the short chain fatty acid will be able to be absorbed here in the stomach through the simple diffusion. But there are still a lot of the fat and triglyceride that is remain undigested and will be moving into the small intestine. In the small intestine, these lipid, these fat and triglyceride will be completely broken down by the pancreatic lipase after the emulsification, by the bowel juice. The emulsification by the bowel juice will make these triglyceride easily digested by the lipase and produce all the product. So all these products are the subunit. So these include the long chain fatty acid, monoacylglyceride, short chain fatty acid, and also the glycerol. Long chain fatty acid and also the monoacylglyceride will be absorbed through the diffusion, but its diffusion into the intestinal cell. And from there, they will combine with the protein to create the chylomicron, and these chylomicron will be carried into the lacteal of the villi. In other words, these two, the long chain fatty acid and the monoacylglyceride, will be absorbed into the lacteal of the villi. On the other hand, the short chain fatty acid and also the glycerol will be absorbed through the simple diffusion directly into the capillary of the villi. So same thing like the carbohydrate and also the protein, the lipid absorption and the digestion will be ended in the small intestine. There's no more digestion or the absorption in the large intestine. So with that, this would be the summary of the absorption for the carbohydrates, protein, and the fat.